Okay, everyone. We are here with Chris Richardson. He's a Green Party candidate for U.S. Congress in California's 7th District. We are here to talk about the Veteran Affairs or Veteran Administration's electronic health record system. Currently, it is using a system called Vista A, which was developed by the VA itself to a private firm now called Cerner. And Chris
Cerner.
Richardson,
Cerner.
Cerner. Oh,
Yeah. It's not Cerna. It's
I
Cerner.
see.
Yeah. They're out of St. Louis.
Gotcha. Cerner.
Yeah.
Okay. And go ahead and give us your opinion on this, Chris.
Okay. Very good. Basically, this is an attempt to privatize the VA once again. And this is not the first time that the VA has tried this, and it has failed every time. Vista was developed by the VA personnel during the 70s, and it's been running the VA hospitals for 40 years. There's 40 years of patient outcomes that are stored in Vista. And, one of the additional features of this are that this system has worked so well that the Department of Defense adopted it for their 205 hospitals around the world, and the Indian Health Service adopted it for their 60 hospitals across the U.S. And, each of them customized it for their own specific needs. And Vista was flexible enough to adapt to each of them. Now, it's also running some private hospitals, such as Oroville Hospital in Northern California. And it's been designated as FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, which also makes it world domain, not just American domain. And to that point, it has become the national health system of Jordan, and it has been adopted by 19 hospitals in India and Pakistan, and Mexico is using it, as well as, a number of other countries are attempting to use it. And basically, you get the source code. It's not just a compile and dump. You get the actual code that runs everything. So you have no secrets as to how it actually works. And it's very supportable if you develop your own support staff. And
so Vista was developed by the Veterans Affairs?
Yes. It was developed by VA personnel on VA time. And this is one of the powerful things about it, is that it is you have the ability to adapt it to your particular needs. As new needs arise, you can adjust them to the existing code base. And this is one of the powerful things of putting the code, or the having the programmers in the hospitals at the same time to work with the people at the point of care. And you get an incredible amount of power out of that. In a few hours to a couple of days, you can begin a whole new application area. If you try and do this with a commercial vendor, it'll be 18 to 24 months in order to accomplish the same thing. And what you will have at the end is a 2-year-old application.
Okay.
Here, yeah.
Yeah. So Now you actually helped develop this Vista, is that correct?
I have developed aspects of it. I have developed the air trap summary, which goes ahead and you know we keep track of every place that uh, there's been a problem with the software, and it records what line of code was executing and the symbol table and what just the whole environment of what happened, so we can go back and take a look at it and fix the problem and solve it.
And
And
you were working on it for 10 years, is that correct?
actually longer than that, more like 25, because I
Oh, I
I,
see.
I was on the uh, proposal team for the DoD implementation of Vista, CHCS1, and that worked very well. There was a compute off. Just as a quick aside, to give you an idea of the how cheap this system really can be. There was a compute off between Baxter Travenol, Technicon, McDonnell Douglas, which was the premier SEI software development company at the time, and SAIC doing the VA set aside. Now, each of these four vendors were given $25 million just to build the entry into the compute off. And after that, they would supply what their actual bid was, and then it would take off from there. Baxter Travenol and Technicon spent their money and said no bid. SAIC and McDonnell Douglas were the two remaining vendors that were in competition, and the McDonnell Douglas entry was 68% functionality, and their bid was $2.6 billion. SAIC's entry into the compute off was 98% functionality and 1.01 billion. So we were about 42% of the number two bid. And if McDonnell Douglas had just stood there, they could have gotten 15% of the contract, because that would give them, the DoD, a competitor into the recompete. Well, and it was brilliant, a brilliant idea on the DoD side, because they would have a competitor built into the whole process. Well, McDonnell Douglas threw up their hands and walked away from the table, and we ended up with all 100% of the contract. And in 10 years, we implemented it across three different platforms, which was, would stymie most applications. But we were able to gear the application to the particular environment that they were going into. The Air Force hospitals are usually small clinics that are associated with the air bases. The Navy has medical facilities on board ship and on land, and so their needs are different. The military, the Army has much larger hospitals, like Eisenhower, which is 1,000-bed hospital, and Landstuhl, which is another about 1,300 bed hospital in Germany. And it works very well. It just worked very well. That
Okay, so
plus, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, so can you tell me now about the Cerner system and what that looks like, and if you have criticisms of it?
Well, actually, the DoD has decided to go with Cerner, and Cerner is very good at selling to management, not to the technical people. And so the management hands the technical people a package and say, live with it. And trying to do medicine that way is horrible. It is a nightmare. And yes, it does some of the basic stuff, but there's an awful lot that is left in the wings. And, there's no flexibility. Basically, this is the thing. The need arises at the point of care. You have something that comes in and says, oh my God, I need to track something that is not part of the original design. And it says, okay, fine. In the Vista model, that's about a 20-minute effort to put a new field in. In Cerner, it's going to be 18 to 24 months.
Right. So let me see here. There have been a few criticisms in the past. For instance, in 2014, a grand jury in California, having found that the Cerner system knew that Ventura County healthcare executives were unprepared to work with Cerner in a $32 million installation and a $31 million Cerner implementation at the Athens Regional Health System in Georgia, have turned disastrous, leading to the resignation of the CEO and the CIO of that health system. Also in 2016, physicians and nurses at Nanaimo, British Columbia Hospital ER, have called it a huge failure, increasing some types of errors and slowing down the emergency department. The system costs $230 million. So it is. Those are only a couple of the criticisms and failures of the system. So let me ask you this: why do you think that it is being implemented by our leadership?
Politics. It's almost completely politics, and the ones that are going to take the biggest hit are the veterans. They're going to take a big hit on this, and it's going to cost us a fortune. $10 billion. $10 billion for them to just start. That $10 billion would go a lot farther in really taking care of our veterans rather than putting it into the profit line of Cerner. And like I said, we have 40 years of outcomes available that we are not even plumbing at this point. And one of the things that I had advised back in the when we first got the CHCS contract was a holographic electronic medical record, where we could pick up a patient's record complete and carry it to another hospital and instantiate it as if he had never been anyplace else other than that hospital. And that transfer of information is very characteristic of how Vista works. But I was told to sit down and shut up, basically.
Now, who told you that?
The DOD.
Interesting. So officials at the Department of Defense?
Defense. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, they wanted to have more vendors involved. Now, the Vista system is 180 different aspects of the hospital. It is all of them are tied together in the same databases, and it's fully expandable, which is so different than any of the EHRs, except for maybe Epic. Epic is another EHR that is very similar to Vista, but it is for profit, and Vista is free.
So you said that you think that changing to the new system is for political reasons.
Yes.
When you say political reasons, are you saying that it's because they want to go to private firms?
Yes. It's privatization of, what is really one of the best systems that's out there. And it's always ranked high. It's up in the one or two top systems that's ever, compared.
Okay.
Um, but they're throwing it away. It's like we're paying somebody to take all the gold out of Fort Knox, throw it in the ocean, and replace it with silver that we rent. You
Right.
know?
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
In the attempt to privatize it, let me just review the cost. According to the latest VA data provided to Congress, the total cost to implement the new EHR system over 10 years will be 15.8 billion. 10 billion for the Cerner contract, 4.6 billion for infrastructure improvements, and 1.2 billion for contractor program management support services. Um, is that uh, comparable to the cost of Vista, developing and maintaining Vista?
No, not at all. Not at all. In fact, it used to be that you had to, the VA kept the fiction going that you had to run Vista on HP alphas. And, nothing could be farther from the truth. It started out on PDP 11, actually PDP 15s, and then moved to PDP 11s, and then to VAXs, and now to alphas. But it runs under Linux
I
also.
see.
And not only that, but the whole software stack is open source.
I see. Um, and so, what can you estimate the cost of maintaining the Vista system? And does Vista accomplish the current
Yes.
goals of what is needed? In other words, we're moving to better technology and becoming more efficient. Is Vista able to meet those needs better than Cerner, or do you think they went to Cerner because Cerner might have something that does bring us better technology?
Well, actually, Vista has marched forward with the technology very well. And one of the interesting things about it, once they discovered that it ran under Linux, the cost of running Vista dropped to commodity Linux boxes, which are very cheap compared to HP alphas. And they don't even make alphas any longer. And they were keeping the line going just because of the hospitals that were using Vista, but it's not necessary.
So, does it seem like there's a culture of trying to push privatizing
Yes,
services from the VA?
yes, and the DoD as well.
And do you think this new administration, the Trump administration, is pushing that forward?
Oh, on rails.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They don't even consider what the harm is that they're doing. They're just doing it,
Uh-huh.
and let the blocks fall where they may. Basically they're blowing up the system just to say that they've done something.
Uh-huh. Okay. And is the decision final? Is there a way that it could possibly be uh, reversed so that we could stay with Vista, or is there something that people can do to express their views that we should stay with Vista, or whichever side they might be on?
Well, let me put it this way. Cerner really hates taking on patient histories. I worked at Beth Israel Hospital when they were thinking of going to Cerner from Octo Barnett's system that was a precursor to Vista. And if they just turned on the Cerner system and ran with it, it was going to be expensive. But by bringing in the histories of the patients, which by law, the hospitals have to do, they have to keep that history. They were at a point where the cost went up asymptotically. It just doubled and redoubled depending on how many years back you go in the histories. And there was already back in '89 when no, it was '98. I'm sorry, '98 when I was at Beth Israel, and they already had at least 30 years of patient history at that point. And they finally just threw Cerner out because the price was just exorbitant. And, there's no evidence that they aren't going to do the same thing. Now, this $10 billion contract is going to more than double the size of Cerner. Cerner is in St. Louis, and they have an interesting way of dealing with their people that they've got a kind of a draconian no complaint policy that if you agree to not complain, you'll be eligible for an increase in your salary. If you complain, you're out of the game, and you're frozen at that level of your income.
Interesting. So I'll tell you that I have a question whether or not the cost of Cerner is to implement their system for the VA is not being just really overpriced because it's the VA and because they have the political power to implement the system at such a high price. Because it seems to me like other hospitals or healthcare systems have purchased it at a much lower price. So it seems like they're taking advantage of our government.
Well, the VA is 160 different hospitals. And, we were able to do the 205 DOD hospitals for actually with the overruns and the changing of the platforms and everything. It came to about $2 billion in the first 10 years.
Yes.
Yeah, but that was back in the 80s and early 90s.
Right.
Okay,
so let's convert from the cost to what about the healthcare? Will this reduce the healthcare to veterans, and may it possibly even cost the lives to veterans?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And like I have intimated, any changes that the hospitals need to make is going to take forever. I mean, it in the life of a patient, it is forever. When you need help now. And, some of the efforts to bring third-party vendors in have been totally disastrous in that we had a spinal cord injury effort where they had bought a bunch of Linux machines, but they didn't know exactly what they were going to do with them, so they were going to use them for keeping doctors' notes for spinal cord injury. Great, that's marvelous. but they weren't feeding those back into Vista. They were keeping them separate. And anytime you keep information separate like that, you run into the problem of having two different sets of diagnosis about the patient and what the current state of that patient is. And, you know, it was a very real patient safety issue. And I tried to bring that up. And again, I was told to sit down and shut up.
Wow.
And that was by the VA.
That's amazing. Let me ask you another question. If soldiers are injured in wartime and need critical care at one of their hospitals, is this the system that they will depend on?
It is my understanding that they are planning on going to Cerner at the different VA hospitals around the world, which right now in the Middle East, patients are mobilized to Landstuhl in Germany, and then they're stabilized. And once they're stabilized, they're shipped back to the States to Walter Reed or Bethesda or Malcolm Grow, depending on which arm of the service they're in. Army goes to Walter Reed, Navy goes to Bethesda, and Air Force goes to Malcolm Grow.
And so in Germany, are they going to be using Cerner?
I can't say specifically, but right now they're running CHCS1, which was the DoD's version of Vista.
I see.
Yeah,
I see.
And there was a vendor that wanted to duplicate all of the information that we had collected, with CHCS1 at Landstuhl, and we said, okay, fine. And it said, what data do you want? And they said, we want it all. And said, okay, fine. And we started downloading to them. And after 2 weeks, they ran out of disk space. We still had lots of information to send them.
Right. Wow. Yeah.
Well, this is the thing, is that there's an efficiency in Vista, which is associated with the language that it's written in, a language called MUMPS, which is now 50 years old and was the third ANSI standard language. And it's a beautiful language in that there's only one data type, strings, and it builds what they call a sparse matrix array, which is an incredibly flexible database structure that allows you to put essentially an infinity of additional information between two nodes. It just expands and expands as you need it. And this is why the data dictionary is so important, and part of the model of the holographic electronic medical record that I was proposing.
Interesting. So this decision was decided yesterday, or it was reported yesterday?
It was signed yesterday.
The decision was signed yesterday.
Yeah.
Do you have any last thoughts?
Well, this is going to be another $10 billion that is right down the rat hole. And hopefully, we still have an awful lot of people that are capable of using Vista, and it's available for free. And if you've got a laptop someplace, you can install it. It's free. And there's a lot of documentation on it. There's what we call the Vista Documentation Library. And it is, it's like 2.6 gigabytes of documentation about the VA system. And it's separated into separate documents on each of the 180 different aspects of the package. You know, one of the packages is the BCMA, the Barcode Medication Administration. This was a package that was designed by a nurse, and it has removed medication errors by 86%, which is huge. You know, that's a lot of veterans that are alive today because they got the right medicine at the right time.
Right.
You know, and I was part of the installation of BCMA here in Sacramento and in Martinez, California, and we had problems with the third-party vendors as well.
So, so Chris, let's wrap it up. Go ahead. Can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your campaign and how that's going?
Yes. Well, I'm running a very low-key campaign, but with the ballot statements that came out, the incumbent, Ami Bera, has only the Democratic Party endorsing him. There are actually 5 candidates running. 2 are Republicans, and neither one of them got the Republican endorsement. I got the Green Party as well as the Peace and Freedom Party endorsements. And also there are a couple of, well, Ami Bera is pushing the Affordable Care Act, which unfortunately is a gift to the insurance companies. And the insurance companies add nothing to healthcare, absolutely nothing. They increase prices because they want to keep this such that only the members of their club get health care, and increase delays of people getting health care, and also decreasing successful outcomes. And this is one of the big problems that we're running into here, is that single payer is the only way that we're going to get relief for the people who are being exposed by the ACA. Okay, the insurance companies are saying, yes, right now, no problem. We'll take your pre-existing conditions. But the thing is, they're keeping notes. When the ACA fails, your costs go up dramatically. You are now assigned to a much more expensive pool. And your costs are going to go through the roof. And basically, you know, in the last election, we were talking about, you know, with McCain running for president in 2012, they were talking about, oh, you know, there's death squads. We've got death squads. They're called health insurance companies. They are the gatekeepers as to who gets health care and who doesn't. And with single payer, it doesn't matter. Your pre-existing conditions don't matter at all. If you need help, you get help. And that is the thing and you know what's so cool about it is that the industrialists are starting to realize that, oh, with single payer, I don't have to deal with the insurance companies any longer. You know, my profits aren't going out the door to the insurance companies. And I've now got more money that I can invest in my business, and I can also invest in my employees. Gee whiz.
I like what you said about the death panels, because a lot of people ignore the fact that even though they're insured, pretty much everybody is underinsured. In other words, there are conditions that they're not going to treat. There's medications they're not going to support. So nobody is fully covered.
Exactly. And this is the thing is that the health insurance companies are clubs. You have to pay their premium in order to be in the club, but they still maintain the right to refuse you service. They've got you coming and going. You got to put the money out in order to be part of the club, but they don't have to pay.
Right. And there's the profit motive and the excessive
Oh yeah.
CEO pays salaries.
Well, not only that, but they also fix prices. They raise the price of healthcare to the point where without an insurance company, you cannot afford it. You cannot afford healthcare. And so, you're between the rock and the hard place. And the cost of healthcare in America is so outrageous compared to the rest of the world. And our outcomes are horrible. Our outcomes are like, we're slightly above Uganda in outcomes. And basically we're paying an awful lot and getting an awful lot less
Yeah,
than other countries.
absolutely. Well, Chris, thank you for bringing the attention to this issue of the electronic health system
Yes.
for the VA and for running for
Mhm.
Congress and your advocacy for healthcare overall.
Also, if you go to worldvista.org, you can find links to download Vista and play with it yourself. And also, there's even a virtualized version that's already set up. All you got to do is run, your emulator and plug it in, and it'll run.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Hi, Chris.
Also, there is a conference coming up in June in Fairfax, Virginia, at George Mason University, the 16th through the 18th. And I will be there. And hopefully by that time, we'll know whether I'm going to be on the ballot in November.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
All right,
Well,
Chris. Thanks a lot, huh?
you bet. Take
You
care.
have a
Thank
good
you
rest of
very
your
much.
weekend.
You bet. You too. Take care.